Guys, it is finally here. I sat all morning and waited, and RimWorld Anomaly 1.5 is finally here. I genuinely don't know how to express how excited I am, so let's just jump right into this. But real quick, here are some mods that I'm using. They are solely cosmetic, everything except for simple sidearms. Got it? Good. There is a link to these mods in the video description. The first thing that I did was go ahead and start a new game. Now, looking through the scenarios, I do see a new one called the Anomaly. The description is as follows. Your research expedition has finally arrived at the source of the anomalous signal, an ancient archotech monolith on a distant planet. As you survey the structure from orbit, the scanner's audio feed forms garbled syllables which repeat your own name over and over. Your crewmate screams as her flesh begins flowing and reforming. A blinding beam of energy reaches up from the planet and tears your research vessel apart. You have disturbed something ancient and inhuman. Alright then, well, it looks like we're also starting with quite a bit of stuff here, including some books, some weapons, some twisted meat, as well as some other things, which I'm very excited to check out. Very quickly, I chose Cassandra Classic, and I'm going to be playing on Blood and Dust. My world seed is Nikita. I'm starting with all of the factions. I'm going to have the highest population possible and a 30% coverage. Thankfully, it appears that our crashing pods will be landing not too far off from an Outlander city. This is perfect in case we need to do any trading. The downside is, of course, we're also landing by some pirates. Now, for the ideology of our crew, I ended up going with a simple RimWorld classic ideology, even though there are plenty to choose from, especially some of the newer ones that are quite interesting, but I felt that a classic ideology would fit more with our research crew. And I personally think it'll be more fun to learn about who they are, their personalities, and ideological beliefs as we go instead of setting them right now. Speaking of our crew, for our very first crewmate, we actually have someone who I will end up naming Jasper, who has a flesh tentacle arm and is pretty good at most skills. For our second crewmate, we have someone who will be named Moon, who has the skills that Jasper currently lacks in for the most part. And finally, last but not least, we have Van. Van is a ghoul, which is described as being someone who has been implanted with an archotech shard, twisting them into a jittering murder machine. Oh. Well, that's neat. Just before we landed on the planet, we ended up getting our starting screen here, basically telling us that our mission was far from over. Somehow, I don't doubt that in the least, but right now our main concern, and only concern for the time being, is survival. The inhabitants of this planet, for the most part, are anything but friendly. We would quickly need to cobble together a shelter before nightfall. Not for us, actually, but more specifically for all of our resources. I would say that theft is more likely than someone killing us. Of course, though, we were sure to take a book break here and there to keep our minds sharp and entertained. During most of my playthroughs, I normally don't start with any resources, and I bring that up because I started digging into this hill instead of building a small wooden shack or steel shack with all the resources that we actually landed with. But even from a narrative perspective, I do think that this is still something that Moon and Jasper would do, as they are just scientists, not exactly architects or builders, so this would be the safest place for them to keep their resources. Before falling asleep for the night, the two of them would equip turret packs. To briefly give an explanation, these are battery-powered turrets that they could deploy from their backs at any time. Now, you may be asking yourself, why would they be wearing these before they go to sleep? Well, funny enough, that is because they are going to be sleeping outside on the ground. Now, I realize that seems a bit counterintuitive, but because the inside of this little cavern that we have dug out is very dirty and many of the items in there are very ugly, I don't want them to have that negative mood debuff. Besides, they are both armed to the absolute teeth, and we also have Van patrolling the area, and also standing over us while we sleep. I feel safer already. As the sun rose, we would begin filling our stomachs before beginning on the real work that we came here for, the monolith. We could feel its power irradiating the air molecules around us. We had to investigate further. Its surface was warm to the touch. We could hear a faint humming inside. The hum becomes louder. The shapes begin to flow in Moon's vision, but the surface isn't changing. Power begins to uncoil in the empty space. A black shape is forming in her mind. The anomaly is stirring. We must keep focusing on the anomaly. The humming was so loud at this point it was vibrating the very earth that the monolith sat on. Moon could hear faint screaming. So much screaming. Well, that was something. The monolith has twisted and changed form. Moon was apparently overcome with a horrifying vision, and in an instant, she understood. This monolith is a doorway, just barely cracked open now. Something dark beyond imagination stirs on the other side, seeping into our reality. Our tinkering with the monolith apparently has caused a gritty fog that burns skin and smells ancient somehow to cover the entire area, and apparently invokes a sense of dread. Well, the monolith itself has definitely changed. I might even say evolved in a form. We also ended up having some harbinger trees sprout, which are apparently some gnarled trees that kind of look like flesh and eat dead bodies. There was also a little part about a tribal myth about a shapeless god who rules over an endless black ocean, but that part kind of scared me. Myth or not though, we are people of science, and my scientific opinion is that these trees, regardless of what they look like, will help us dispose of dead bodies, and thus they are very useful. I then spotted a message that said that we need holding platforms. Now I wasn't sure as to why that was, because I don't see any entities around except for maybe Van. Now I assumed that it wasn't talking about Van, but we had a holding platform, so I thought I'd go ahead and put it down and give it a shot, and of course I was right, it wasn't talking about Van. But I had noticed that the holding platform had a strength of 0 because it's outdoors, so I decided to put it inside for any entities that we do catch. Obviously, our next order of business would be a proper shelter for us to all stay safe and sound in at night, but unfortunately Jasper fell asleep just before this could be completed. We have had a very unique day though, so I can't say that I blame him and his strange twitching tentacle arm. I also spotted Moon asleep out here. Oh my god! Oh, my mistake. Actually, it turns out she's completely fine. She just fell asleep on a corpse. My bad. Sometime later though, after Jasper got up, he would actually end up finishing at the very least the bedrooms for he and Moon, and also almost completing the research room. And the two of them would also do a really good job of testing out their new beds. Now I know it might be a little bit hard to tell because of all the fog in the area, but it's actually daytime, so their sleep schedules are a little screwed up. By the time that Jasper had finally woken up, we had him begin working on our electronics, such as our battery, our heater, so on and so forth. Until our first entity revealed itself. Known only as a sight stealer, this twisted creature appeared out of thin air. It would seem that it has some form of invisibility, but we have a boomstick. This unholy son of a bitch was a lot stronger than he looks, and that's pretty damn strong. But our shotgun fixed his little red wagon. Jasper quickly rushed in to capture the creature and chain it up in our storage room. The beast wouldn't make it easy. It was squirming the entire time and trying to fight its restraints. Funny enough, even taking it down ended up giving us some new research that we unlocked. I wonder what else we could learn from this creature. We'll begin tending to it to ensure that it doesn't die so we could study it further. Since Moon was the one that touched the monolith and seems to have some sort of bond with it, it seemed fitting that she be the one to begin studying this monster. Out of the two of them, she was the only one with any first-hand knowledge about these dark powers. As Moon was doing that, I realized that Van here was becoming quite hungry, but he doesn't just eat any normal food, he needs raw meat. And you may have already noticed, but we don't exactly have any here at the base. Well, not exactly. We didn't have any raw meat or corpses yet. As these two young beggars were minding their own business, Van jumped out of the woodwork and attacked them. Even Jasper would join in to prevent them from hurting Van further. Sorry about this, kiddo. The other would attempt to flee the area, but was easily caught by Van. Now I know what you're thinking, Rat Knight, why would you kill them when you could easily kill some animals instead for the same results? Well, one, I don't like these beggars soliciting at our base, and two, it brought Van a lot of joy to eat them, and who am I to deny that from him? I mean, look at him, look at the big smile on his face. But now with Van's hunger satiated, I decided to begin some research into the anomaly. I would actually start with entity containment. The reason being, of course, we only have the one holding platform, so if we lose it, we need to be able to build another. Shortly thereafter, I spotted Moon studying the monolith once more, and it didn't really click in my head until I saw her having a beer that was the research into entity containment. It would appear, just like the monster we have chained up in our basement, that there is a time limit to how often you can actually study it. Because of this, I assume she'll have enough time to advance us further in the usual research tree, so we began looking into microelectronics. electronics. But of course, because of our humble beginnings here and Moon's adequate at best intellectual skill, this research is going to take a very long time to complete. Of course, once it is finally completed though, we'll be able to use a high-tech research bench, and hopefully by that time as well, we may have someone who has a better intellectual skill. We ended up having our very first mad animal. It was a bunny rabbit. Of course, it was no match for Van and his immense ghoul strength though. We would also have Jasper begin extensively working on a beautiful kitchen as well as a food storage area for us, a fine place to dine together and store all of the corpses that we're going to have to use to feed Van as well. As you could probably imagine, since it was only Jasper working on it, it took quite a bit of time, so much in fact that during this time, we would also have the opportunity to name our faction as well as our settlement. I ended up naming the faction the Order of the Void, and I named our settlement here Monolith City. Personally, I thought it was a wonderful name and was quite fitting. We also ended up having our very first raid from some of the not-so-friendly inhabitants of the planet. I am, however, happy to report it only appears to be one poor sap wielding a pistol. We're not soldiers and we have very little combat experience, but even we researchers should be able to take him down quite easily, as we do outnumber him and we outgun him. He rushed in on Jasper very quickly, so Jasper rushed to the western side of this structure to try and aim and take fire at him while the others rushed in to melee attack. And with a little bit of elbow grease, we took him down fairly easily. I was going to try to tend to him and take a look at his stats, but as Moon began tending to him, he started crawling away, a new feature of RimWorld 1.5, I might add. And I do realize he's actually starting to get away, but I couldn't help but look because it was so cool, and you know, I don't really think he's going to get all that far anyhow. For the time being, we're going to be keeping him in our study and begin tending to his wounds so he doesn't die. After taking a look at his stats, I realized that I really wanted to keep him around, and I also saw that he was a delicate wimp, and this would explain why he fell so easily to us in combat. But of course, I didn't want him as a fighter, I wanted him for that big brain. Better be getting comfy, pal, because you are one of us now. We would end up making him a proper room to stay in, increasing the chances of him joining us sometime soon, since it will help us decrease his resistance quite quickly. Though of course further improvement is definitely needed for sure. Either way, he seemed quite happy sleeping in a bed for a change instead of the research room floor. As mentioned previously, our researchers here decided that they wanted to give our faction and this place a name, meaning that they do expect to stay here for a very long time. On top of that, since there are winters on this planet, it would seem, we are going to need a stash of food so that we don't starve to death this winter. And a field of rice plants is the perfect nutritious meal that we need, and it's also very quick at growing, so that's a plus. At one point, somebody's transport pod must have went haywire and they ended up crashing in our territory. They didn't have any interesting skills, and I was not too interested in keeping them as one of us, so we ended up stripping them and leaving them to die. But first, we'll be taking that sweet parka with us. Like I said, we need to start prepping for winter, and that means clothing as well. The icy cold winter winds could take us just as fast, if not faster, than starvation could. Then we would end up like this poor dumb sap, dead and cold. But this planet having winters and other normal seasons, or at least what we consider normal, is about the only thing that we do know about it. And that's about the only thing that there seems to be that is normal about it as well. So many secrets to be learned and unlocked here. What is this planet hiding? What is or even could be on the other side of this doorway into the unknown, into the black abyss? All we really know now is that the void continues to call. It continues to beckon out to Moon. Not only to her, but to all of us. But we shall not shy away from those calls. Our mission is clear. Our research must be completed, and we must find out what is going on here. We will answer the call of the anomaly. I want to thank you guys ever so much for watching today's video, today's first episode of the RimWorld 1.5 Anomaly DLC series. I'm just so excited, I'm sure you can tell, and it's probably annoying at this point, but I've just been so extremely excited for this new DLC and for the update ever since I heard that it was announced. If you guys have been watching me for a little while, you probably know I ended 2 of my series that were ongoing just because this was coming out so that we could do a series in the Anomaly DLC DLC and in the 1.5 update. That is how excited I was, of course. And of course, I've been waiting around all day for this DLC to drop. I thought it was coming out around about noon my time, but apparently it was actually coming out around about 1 p.m. my time, so it looks like I was just a little bit off, unfortunately. No, not that that's too big of a deal, it's only 1 hour, but that is 1 hour that I could have spent playing and making this video, of course. This video is a little bit shorter than what I hope for these episodes to be. I'd like to shoot for about 25 to 30 minutes, if not more in some cases. This one is only shorter because really I'm working with limited time and I really want to get this first episode out today for you guys since the DLC and the update dropped today. But truly, I do hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I love you guys ever so much. If you guys would like to provide me with some suggestions and some information about the DLC, I've read through a good bit of stuff about it as well as the 1.5 update, so I'm not too shocked with a lot of stuff, but I still didn't, study all that hard about it because I like for some things to kind of surprise me and kind of stay a mystery. So if you guys want to give me some vague information or tips and tricks or things you'd like to see throughout the series and, all that jargon, of course, be sure to let me know. But I love you guys and I will see you next time. Goodbye.